Hello everyone, Harley here. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention that this was a very long podcast, so we've split it into two different podcasts. We're going to do one this week and we're going to do another one next week. We're talking a lot about teaching with a fellow teacher, Dan Dolman, and a previous guest, Josh Locke. Unfortunately, Simon couldn't make it to this one, but he will be back next month, don't you worry. On with the show. Hello everybody and welcome to the Unity in Music podcast. I'm joined tonight by Mr. Josh Locke and Mr. Dan Dolman.
Hello.
Unfortunately...
you got two claps.
I did well there.
Can you do mine again?
Josh Locke?
Yay!
That was better.
Unfortunately, Mr. Simon Goldsmith couldn't be here tonight. We had quite a few planned over the last 2 weeks and none of the podcast recordings quite happened, and so this is a little bit last minute. We don't quite know what we're doing.
Everything's written shook up, isn't he?
Very badly on a notepad, and we're probably going to spend most of the time trying to work out what it actually says because it was written by a teacher. So,
fast hand.
Yes.
Fast hand Dan.
With that in mind, we're going to spend tonight talking about teaching.
Grown-up things.
Discussing all about sort of teaching music in a class environment, in a one-to-one environment, or in a one-on-your-own watching YouTube videos environment. Dan, do you want to start us off? Tell us about yourself. Who are you? Why are you here?
Why am I here?
In your own house?
Yes, because I live here. I used to do a lot of drum teaching. I did it for about 12 years. That's pretty much all I did. I lost count of how many students I taught back then. It was pretty ridiculous.
Nice.
And now I do classroom stuff. Secondary school, so year 7 up to 13. Music tech, that sort of thing.
Cool. So you're well adept in the teaching community.
I hope so.
Well, yeah.
The boss seems happy.
Yes, that's all right.
I still have a job. Government haven't split you yet.
Not just yet. No.
And Josh, you teach as well?
Yes, yeah, I teach at Planet Music, so it's down Martlesham Way, and it's really great because we've got lots of different rooms where we have lots of different types of teachers in there. So you'll have a great violin teacher, a great keyboards teacher, great sax teacher, a load of really great guitarists there. So you have a nice little kind of microcosm of all the industry that we've got
teaching
around
community
it.
Of music.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So we can all sort of. It's good for that kind of environment. Is also really good because you get lots of different contrasting opinions of the way you teach. And also, when you've got like a little separate moment when you don't have a lesson, you can just go and jam with another teacher and you'll learn stuff when you're supposed to be teaching. So it's great.
That's one thing I say. I haven't taught for a long time, and I know a lot of people sort of around when we were at college, sort of when they finished, they're like, yeah, well, I'm going to sort of do private lessons and stuff like that to sort of be able to afford to get through uni or wherever they went or whatever they decided to next. But I kind of actively avoided it through fear that I would teach wrong. And it's taken me until recently to sort of go, I think I know what I'm doing enough to teach somebody else at least how I do it, know. And that's one of my always been my biggest fears of, what if you tell someone something wrong?
I remember having that fear when I first started teaching.
That's not just me then, that's right.
No, not at all. I started teaching drums when I was 19, so it was quite a what do you do? Just I'll do what my drum teacher did with me. It was the only recourse kind of thing.
It's such a subjective industry, isn't it? Because it's just what could be wrong for some people can be right for another person. And it's also in your own delivery, isn't it? Sort of thing. You could be teaching exactly the right thing, but you could be teaching it in the wrong way, but you don't know. It's so much to do with who you're sitting down with. And it's, the way that I teach is completely different to how you'll do it nowadays, is because you've got a big group of people and you've got to connect with all of them at once.
It's completely different from one-on-one,
and that's so difficult in my mind. But I can imagine, after you've been doing that for so long and you've taken a break from drum teaching now, so that just seems like the norm to you now.
Yep.
And that I can imagine that just the complete differences between them, but when you're in a lesson, you can't really think about that too much, because otherwise, if you're umming and ahhing about, if you're going, because then exactly, and they're going to second guess you, aren't they? Because they're just going to be like, well, this guy doesn't look like he really knows if he's sure that he should be saying this right now. So I'm not sure if I'm going to take this with a pinch of salt right now. But that's the way that learning works, isn't it? Everything should be taken with a pinch of salt, really, because you are getting transferred by the medium of another person, and sometimes they can be talking utter bullshit. But that's to you.
I mean, that's a very mature attitude, and I think most.
Nobody said that before.
Never heard it from you before. I think most.
I'll go back to playing with my dummy now.
I think. You tell me. Most of your students are how old?
They range between around 8 to about 15, 16.
Yeah. So
it's a similar. Well, no, not really a similar. Just a little bit younger.
In fact, yeah.
You do.
And when I was drum teaching, it was mainly in secondary school. So even then, but I mean, that sort of, I'll take it with a pinch of salt. I don't know if most of the students I taught would have thought like that. I think they probably see you as like the oracle, and whether and that pressure is what makes you worry that, oh my God, they're going to believe everything I say, and what if I say it slightly wrong? And I think in a way that's even more pressure, isn't it?
So trying to feel like you're an infallible force, it's just not
they
right.
Put you on that pedestal, even if it's not true.
Exactly. I think, do you guys go to uni?
No, I didn't actually. I did the Open University music course.
Brilliant!
Years after, so I went straight out of.
How old were you when you started?
Teaching.
No, on the Open University.
Oh God, 20 something.
Early 20s.
I've lost track.
Really?
Mid, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'd gone to college and done just music. At BTEC National, as it was.
Which one? Suffolk
Culture Institute.
Oh, right, cool.
I think they still run a version of it.
They do.
Changed name.
Probably what we did. Well, we did
similar. We did a BTEC at the Suffolk New College.
Oh, right, cool. Right, it might well be. Same course. Did that and went straight into teaching drums, and I did it for years. And accidentally ended up like, oh, can you take this class? Okay, sure.
That's great.
It was kind of a bit weird, a bit backwards.
Sometimes it's the best way to go into it, to fall into it, because the way that I got into Planet music was because the previous guitar teacher left and went on to doing private teaching, and I got his old students.
Wicked.
So I've got sort of 20-30 students that I teach now, just from, they were like, okay, can you do it, can you start on Monday? And it's like, yeah, sure, whatever, and we'll just go and do it. Whereas if you're actually seeking out students, there's something could be different.
An uphill struggle.
How do you recruit children? Because it's a pretty grey area there. It's like, hi, can I take your children to my house? Oh, I'm a guitar teacher, it's fine.
Yeah. I remember it took me about 2 years to get to the point. I was working bar at the time, working behind bars as a barman, and just make that clear.
You weren't working in bars.
It took a couple of years. No, nothing else. It took a couple of years to get to that point
ugly
where where I didn't need to do that anymore, and I could just teach. It took so long. It took so long. So I mean, I guess if we're giving tips for people who are trying to do this, one thing I did, I wrote a letter to every single secondary school in Essex saying, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, some sort of CV kind of thing, which was pretty slim at the time, being like 19. But I sent it to I think it was 64 schools, 64 secondary schools. And a few years later, when I was trying to get the private thing a bit bigger, I did a similar sort of thing. I sent a poster to every single primary school, within like a 10-mile radius of where I wanted to base my teaching.
Just your face on it.
No.
Have you seen this man around your child?
Often seen in bars.
But do you find that it's a similar kind of process that you would do to try and get gigs?
Yeah,
where you would
absolutely.
Actually sort of be planning to... Because we were talking about this before, weren't we? When we did our last podcast together. Sometimes like I said podcast, and I think that's the thing. We did what we were talking about, how we get gigs, and you were saying that sending emails and calling people, and I was talking about White Buffalo and how we would call people and leave him a voicemail of him singing to a venue, which I thought was brilliant. But then it's kind of thing, are there grey areas involved with that, just transferring over to teaching? Like, can you, because when you're trying to recruit children, is that something completely different nowadays with our kind of very protective culture that we have now, where it's like, you really do have to be vetted and things like this? Because I've gone through degrees, obviously GCSE, but also A-level and national diploma. But in terms of actual teacher training, and stuff like this. It doesn't really go for pretty much every single music teacher I know hasn't got a PGCE or anything like this.
Well, no, why would they? I mean, if they had that, they would be a classroom teacher.
Right, yeah.
And to get that qualification, well, not to get a PGCE as such, but to get QTS, to be a qualified teacher, you have to spend a year being a classroom teacher, and you have to spend another year being a newly qualified teacher. So you've just spent 2 years in a classroom. Why would you stop and then go back to trying to build a business that you've just let go for 2 years?
So this takes
there's
us
no
back.
such thing as a qualified.
This takes us back to sort of what you were saying about
what qualifies you to.
Yeah, like in terms of like, if you're teaching right and doing exactly what you should be doing, because I don't know. Again, back to so subjective and things like this. Most of the time we're teaching from experience rather than from qualifications.
Yeah.
And obviously I've got grade 8 and grade 5 theory and all this kind of stuff. There's industry standard things, but I come from a performance industry background, and in terms of record labels and actual running business management and things like this. But in terms of teaching, again, grey areas. Where do you get this kind of idea of what's right and what's wrong with it?
I think you've already hit on you've already mentioned one of the big answers. When I was a Perry, I found it peripatetic teacher. Going to school.
I'm learning every day.
Teach drums for a couple of hours, go away. I found that a really isolated existence. In some schools, you'd go in. The classroom teacher, who's the only music teacher, would be teaching, so you'd kind of wave through the window. You'd go to your little cupboard, which is what it was. Student would come, like no natural light, Student would come, student would go, student would come, student would go. You do that for a couple of hours, and then you go and kind of wave at the classroom teacher again.
I'm still here.
Yeah, the only person you'd see was the guy or girl sitting on reception that you'd sign in with. But the situation you've got at Planet Music, where it's more of a community. Schools don't do it like that, usually. Harlow had a really interesting system. They had a set of music schools. So I think all the secondary schools in Harlow at one point decided to do it this way. So they wouldn't have lessons during the day. They wouldn't drag kids out of maths and throw them to the drum teacher or whatever.
To the wolves,
rightly
to the
or wrongly. They always did it in the evenings. So each school would have I did one on Wednesday. There was another one.
It'll be extracurricular.
Yeah, and it would be from say 4 till 7:30, and it would just be a thing that all. I think I'm right in saying most of the secondary schools in Harlow kind of signed up to that model,
right?
And that was really good because like the situation you've got, all of you were there, all the teachers were there at the same time. And so there's a little bit of a sense of community and a little bit of a sense of backup and kind of you could maybe see other people teaching it, as you say.
And it gives you kind of a lax atmosphere, because I always find it always feels so tense being at schools, because just how many cuts are happening and just how little people want to teach nowadays, just because it's just terrifying, just the prospects of it. From what I hear, obviously I don't experience this, so I'm talking out my arse, but it's that thing of, so whenever I step into a school, I do always have this kind of feeling of just like, man, they need to watch every single thing they do here. It's such a bureaucratic nightmare. Everything's got to be dotted and T'd, and everything seems to be so based on forms and making sure that you've got everything prepared straight away. Whereas, I don't know, sometimes I'm going to a lesson straight from a gig, and I've got to go and teach somebody, and I haven't even thought about what I'm going to be teaching them. I most of the time will bounce off of what they show me. I'll say like, play me something, and then they'll play me something, and I'm like, okay, your particular phrasing here wasn't great, so let's work on your phrasing. So it's that in schools I feel like you don't have that much freedom. Is that right?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, again, you mentioned it earlier that the mindset of teaching a class is so different. Even when I'm trying to teach a whole class of Year 7s how to play Wonderwall on the guitar, for a start,
I didn't know you played guitar.
Oh, tiny bit.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, a little bit. A chord groover, shall we say?
Chord groover.
Yeah, I've got one somewhere around here. I don't know.
And that sounds like an instrument, I think.
Yeah, no, I play a little bit, not much, but no, we boil it right down to if you imagine you've always got to start at the lowest common denominator, because you've got to try and our first battle is to make them interested in it, because if you give a kid a guitar. Imagine giving, well, you do this, I guess, but you do it with kids that come to you and say, I'd like to learn the guitar. Here's my guitar that I got for Christmas.
Well,
and
most of the time it's the parents.
there.
The first hurdle jumped.
Most of the time it's the parents saying, "Here's my child, do something.
with them.
I want him at home right now.
Yeah.
I hate this fucking thing."
But imagine you give an 11-year-old a guitar,
Yeah.
and they've never even seen one before, and they go, "What's this?" So you've got to try and get them into it. You've got to try and make them feel it's achievable. You've got to try and get them to succeed. You've got to try and make it fun before you even get to the. So instead of we don't teach them a chord shape, because the learning curve on that. You've got. I mean, at Kesgrave we have 90-minute lessons. In most schools you have. I mean, I've worked in schools where you have 45-minute lessons. So imagine never seeing a guitar before and trying to form the chord shape of D and changing it to the chord of C. That's going to take you 45 minutes of hard...
The minutiae of it,
and with 29 other kids around you, that's not going to happen.
But going back to what I was saying, but like, in terms of, just how kind of tense it can be in school situations rather than just in private lessons and things like this, do you see it as that it is quite sort of, you are being watched?
No, not at all. No. What I was going to say there was having boiled it down to, right, put one finger on the E string and move it up and down. For a few of them, that becomes a bar chord when they kind of, what's the next thing? So you put your third finger there, and you build it up. But everyone succeeds. And we're trying to, as you say, you're going very prepared. You've got all your resources, you've got all your sheets, you've got your guitars all in tune, and you're all kind of, you've figured out how you're going to lay the classroom out. And it's a big picture thing. Whereas when I was teaching drum lessons and it's one-on-one, although, as you say, it can be very, very reactive, which a classroom kind of can be, but only to a point. You can't say, well, this guy needs another 20 minutes on this, but everyone else is done. We've got to move on, because the other guys are going to get really bored if we don't do the next thing. So he can carry on doing that, and these guys will move on, whatever. You kind of have to have this big picture thing. Whereas with the one-on-one lessons, incredibly intense. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I used to do like a 6-hour day in Malden, which I used to do sometimes.
And how many hours would you do for each student? Would you be like half an hour?
20 minutes.
Yeah, I'll get half an hour.
Yeah, because in a school they can't drag them out of a classroom lesson for much longer than that. They have issues with class teachers kind of kicking off about it. So the kid would come in and they'd be really bright and fresh. And you're right, let's do it, bang, 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 yeah. They just start to kind of slow down and get tired and they leave. And the next guy comes in and you're like, oh yeah, we've got to get going again. And after 6 hours of that,
just like, I peaked way ago.
You're absolutely shattered. So I think the intensity of one-on-one teaching was way, way bigger. With a class, if you manage a class right, it kind of will work itself.
Works in some kind of narrative there. You got a beginning, you got a middle, you got an end.
And it's if you've put your ducks in the right row, well, look at the sheet, sunshine. The answers are on there. Or he sussed it out. Ask him. Can you play it yet? You can. Brilliant. Who needs a hand? 3 hands go up. Go and help him. So you're not actually teaching them. You're enabling the teaching to happen. You're kind of putting everything around the student, and they can't fail because everything. Well, they can, but you're trying to prevent that.
Yeah.
Everything that they need is already there.
You've got a great little roll cage for them, sort of thing.
Yeah, basically. Whereas one-on-one teaching, it's totally reactive, like you say.